Friday, April 12 is Titanic's first full day at sea and third day of the maiden voyage. All the ship's boilers are lit except 3 double-ended boilers and all the single-ended boilers in boiler room number 1. The reason for the latter is because they're only supposed to be lit while the ship is in port, and it's largely speculated that they remained unlit all the way to the sinking. At 12 p.m., the previous day's run is calculated. 484 miles steam since leaving Don's Rock. Average speed 20.98 knots. At some point during the day, Mr. Andrews begins to feel homesick because they have left Ireland behind, and Chief Baker Charles Yogan bakes him some Irish soda bread to comfort him. At 5:46, the Titanic receives an ice warning from the French steamer La Touraine. At night time, there is a dinner party at the Cartier restaurant, attended by Bruce Ismay and several famous guests, including William Thomas Stead, who tells stories about a haunted ancient Egyptian mummy, supposedly on board the Titanic. The guests then disperse, with many going to Mr. Ismay's stateroom for further games. At 12 a.m., the ship's clocks are set back by 49 minutes to adjust with that local time zone, so that now they're running 2 hours 47 minutes ahead of New York Standard Time and 13 minutes behind GMT. It's Saturday, 13th April, the 4th day of maiden voyage. At 12 p.m., the previous day's run is calculated. 519 miles steamed since 12 p.m. yesterday. Average speed 20.91 knots. When this information is posted in public spaces, many passengers who initially thought they would reach New York by Tuesday evening ahead of schedule are now disappointed. It's worth mentioning that when we say reach New York, it does not mean dock at the piers of New York, but it just means arriving at the Nantucket Lightship in New York Harbor. After lunch, first-class passenger Elizabeth Lines overhears a conversation between Mr. Ismay and Captain Smith. They are talking about other steamers and how Titanic's machinery and boilers were performing perfectly on her maiden voyage, just like her sister ship, the Olympic. And then she claims to have heard the lines, "Titanic will beat Olympic's maiden voyage record and reach New York by Tuesday evening instead of Wednesday morning," from Mr. Ismay. So this is how the misconception is born that Titanic was trying to set a speed record. So here's the thing. It is quite possible that Titanic was trying to beat Olympic's record, but remember, Titanic already had a built-in speed greater than the Olympic, and Titanic could not beat the existing Blue Ribbon record for transatlantic voyage because Titanic's maximum speed is 23 knots, whereas 26 knots, I believe, or 28 knots was the Mauritania's record. So they weren't looking to beat that, they were just looking forward to beating Olympic's record. Around the same time, Chief Engineer Bell informs Captain Smith that the fire in the starboard side coal bunker number 10 has finally been extinguished. To do this, Bell had ordered the men to move coal to port side bunkers, and this has now resulted in a 3 degrees list to port, though not everyone actually notices this. And because of this list and wet floor, first-class passenger Irene Harris slipped on the newly mopped floor of Grand Staircase and broke her arm. Though later the doctor was able to patch her up and she was able to attend dinner that night. That's like the only event other than, the conversation between the captain and Mr. Ismay, which we know happened on this day. Then around 11 p.m., the Titanic's wireless radio station stops working, and according to the instructions manual, the operators are not allowed to fix it themselves. Instead, they should just leave it and start using the emergency set, and the machine meanwhile will be fixed only once the ship docks in port. Now that doesn't sound like a big deal, does it? But it actually was. That's because the original radio had a range of 300 to 1000 miles depending on the atmospheric conditions, but the emergency set only had a range of 50 miles. So senior wireless operator Jack Phillips and his assistant Harold Bright decided to take matters into their own hands. They start opening the machine to find the problem, and eventually they discovered that it was just faulty wiring causing this issue. So they fix it with tape, and by 4 to 5 a.m. the machine is finally working. At 12 a.m. the ship's clocks are again set back by 49 minutes overnight. So now the clocks on Titanic are running 2 hours and 2 minutes ahead of New York Standard Time, as well as 2 hours 58 minutes behind GMT. Thank you for watching.